All right. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining the She is Hope LA She Is series with the wonderful, fabulous Angela Bessard. She is the real credit queen. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk about her background. I was talking to my sons tonight about bringing them here, but of course they have homework, but it's important for everyone to learn about credit. So I'm really glad you're on. I'm glad we're recording this because I have a lot of people that wanted this. So thank you, Angela, for spending your evening with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, welcome everyone. And like Tisha said, I am the real credit queen. And the reason why I call myself that is I have been doing this for 33 years now. And I absolutely love what I do because I get an opportunity to help people. And that's what I love about this organization is that it is an organization that helps women and helps all kinds of people. And I'm so appreciative to be a part of this and to come here and share with you guys the knowledge that I have gained over the last 33 years of working in this industry. Credit is so important. I always say that credit is a part of our wellness. And at the end of the day, a credit gives you an opportunity to build wealth, specifically in the United States, because what we have access to, well, interest rates are a little bit high, but one of the things, which is another thing that we do here at She Is Hope, Realty, is they sell real estate. And one of the things that you can do when you have really good credit is you have the opportunity to invest in real estate that grows over time. You have something that's positive cash flow when you're having a rental property and things of that nature. So what I want to do is I am going to share my screen with you. Let's see here. Can everybody see that? I hope so. Make sure. It's a little slow, so I apologize. Come on. Maybe I should have been on the hotspot because it's really, really slow. Mm-hmm.
Recording in progress.
All right. So you're ready?
Uh-oh. Alexa loves us. You know what? Forget it. I'm not going to do the presenter type. Okay. So tonight we're going to be talking about credit and FICO score tools. Okay. And it's what you need to know enough to be dangerous with your credit. And I think that that's so important. You know, I have many clients that I serve, both young adults to older individuals to very wealthy clients that think that credit is not important until they go and they're wanting to buy that house. And unfortunately, because they don't have any credit, they can't have access to the bank's money. And one of the things that you want to do in your life is always create a leverage position because cash is king. And so when you have really good credit, and you can borrow the bank's money to leverage your position, that is the best thing to do. 100%. We have a young lady here in the audience, just so you guys know, and I love speaking to our youth because I think it's so important to teach our children, to teach our grandchildren what they need to know so that they can use their credit as an investment tool, especially when they are embarking on, you know, their later 20s. I have two children that are, well, I have three children actually, but I'm talking about my two children. One is 25 and the other is 27. And I can't tell you how much I have bothered the heck out of them ever since they were 14 about how important it is to have a good credit score, how important it is to put money away, how important it is to understand to also give. It's very, very important. But we're talking about credit today, and we're not talking about giving or anything like that. So why is credit so important? It's so important because, like I said, it gives you the opportunity to use it as an investment platform. It's hassle-free lending. I can't tell you how cool it is to walk in. I just got a new car. I'm super proud of it and happy because I've waited a long time. I did not have a car for 3 years. I sacrificed. My husband and I had one car and it was really tough, but we had a goal and we wanted to buy a Tesla. And so when I walked into Logic's Federal Credit Union and wanted to get my loan, I sat down and the individual said to me, "So how's your credit?" And I said, "Well, why don't you pull it and tell me?" And he pulls it, of course, and he says, "Wow, you have an amazing credit score. Your credit score is 800." And then it gave me the platform and the opportunity to share with him what it is that I do and why I think it is ultimately so important. But he actually took the time to show me. He's like, "Man, I'm so glad I got a chance to meet you because I sit down with people every single day and I try to tell them how important it is." And he had this graph on his desk that showed people the difference in what their payment and their interest rate would be based off of their credit score. And so, of course, it went all the way down to 620. All right, the credit score, but the amount in the payment and the interest was almost astronomical. If I would have had a 620 score, I probably would have paid about $280 more per month for this vehicle. So your credit score can really save you a ton of money. Now, the other thing that it can do for you out there that are business owners, is it can help you when you have a business credit profile to separate your business credit assets from your personal credit assets. I was having a conversation with a client today, and he's explaining to me how frustrated he was that he's always over leveraged on his credit report. And what I mean by that is that he runs a business, he's a lawyer, and he always has his credit cards to the max because he uses it for marketing and business and things of that nature. And I said to him, "Well, why are you using your personal credit instead of using your corporate credit?" And so I'm saying that to impose upon you that if you do have a business, it's very important to put your business debt where it belongs, in the business. It should not be on your personal credit. And that is important for a number of reasons. Number one, when you're going to buy a house, you don't want any of your business debt to weigh down you personally because you are personally applying for that home. You want to make sure that that business debt is exactly like I said, where it needs to be in the business so that when they do your DTI, which is your debt to income ratio, they're going to see exactly what you do personally from your debt to income ratio, and your business is on the side. So you never want to commingle your cash or your money or anything that you do with your business with you personally, because what I've seen happen all too many times is when people do that, when the business fails, so does their life and their family. And we have the corporate shield for a reason, so let's use it. Also, it's really crucial in the sale of a business, having really good business credit. So we'll talk about that at another time because I'm sure we'll have more of these meetings. But so let's talk about the credit score factors and how the FICO score is made up. Well, the first thing I want to tell you is that the credit score is a mathematical algorithm. Okay, so it's basically like a computer. That's the one thing that's so cool, talking about my car again, is that it's like an Apple phone being in my car. It's like everything is in this little dashboard, and that's how you configure it. Well, credit, same thing. It's mathematics. It's a computer. So it has specific things that it really looks at and depends upon in order for you to have a really good score. So what I always like to do is impress upon the people that I speak to about what's really important here, which is 65% of the score. Okay, you see my little arrow here that I'm pointing to. is the most important part of your credit score. And what that is the amount of debt that you carry and how you utilize that debt and that credit. And then the other part is your payment history and or your credit history as a whole. So the thing to remember is that in the credit world, when you have a relationship with a bank or a credit card company, it's just that. It's a relationship that you have with them. So the better you are with that relationship and how you treat that relationship, the better your history is going to be. Now, clearly, if you have a late payment that shows up on your credit report, that's going to affect your payment history, that 35% of the credit score. Also, if you have collections, those are also going to affect that payment history, because a collection is coming to show that you had a relationship with a vendor that went sour, or you didn't pay the bill for some reason, and now they've reported that information on your credit report to unfortunately put your credit in a vulnerable position so that you can come back to them and negotiate a settlement or negotiate a deal with them. So these two pieces of the puzzle that I like to say are the most important things. This 30% amount of debt that you use and how you utilize that. And then your payment history, which is that 35% that we just talked about. So the other part of the payment history that they're looking at is how long you've had a relationship with this bank or financial institution. One thing that you can see with credit and some young people is that they've never been told to actually get a credit card when they're 18, or their parents never put them as an authorized user onto one of their credit cards so that they could help to build their credit history. And unfortunately, then what happens when they get to college and they have a need for things, their credit's not in a good position, and hence why they have to go and get payday loans or get these, banks to give them these credit cards where the interest rates are astronomical. So again, this is why I emphasize the fact that it's so important for young people to be taught this stuff at an early age. When my kids were 14, when they turned 14, I was born Jewish. And one of the things that you do in the Jewish religion is when you turn 14, you have a party and you are considered an adult. And so what I did with my children is say, hey, you're an adult now. So what we're going to do is we are going to write you a check on a monthly basis of what it would be to have your expenditures. So how much it would cost for you to have a lunch or go to the movies or to buy your clothes to go to school, or your books and things of that nature, your cell phone bill. So my husband and I decided that we would write them a check. Now, some people would say, well, why would you do that? Well, because I wanted to teach my kids responsibility at a young age as it pertains to finances. And my older son, he was awesome at it. He mastered it right away. My middle son, we had tantrums. I hate you. You're the worst mother in the world. How could you do this to me? I can't go anywhere. I can't get anything, blah, 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 blah. Funny thing is now is he's an accountant. So he always tells me all the time, Mom, that was like the best that I could ever get of, training, like being in the trenches, understanding what money was about. So I say that to say, once again, is that the longer that you've had a relationship with a bank or a financial institution, the better it is for your credit history. So saying that also is that it's important. Some people get these 0% interest rate offers in the mail, and they want to balance transfer what they have in debt with another credit card company to this new one that has given them the opportunity to have 0% interest rate on the transfer. And what they'll do is they'll take that credit card that they've had for 10 years, balance transfer, and then close it, which is a no-no. Because again, what we're looking at is relationships. So when you take that credit card that you've had for 10 years and you close it out, and now you balance transfer it to this new one because you have a new relationship and you're making payments on that, that actually hurts your credit score. So anytime you open or close an account, whether it's a credit card or a home loan or a car loan, it will negatively affect your credit history up to 90 days. And the biggest reason for that is, like I said before, the credit scoring system is a mathematical equation. And what is it that math is always trying to do? It's trying to balance itself out. Okay. So once things are unbalanced, it's kind of like that game of Jenga, right? So you have Jenga and it's, you're building these blocks on top of each other, right? And you take one out and sometimes you get lucky and it stays the same, but then one person pulls out the block and everything comes tumbling down. Well, it's kind of the same thing. When you unbalance your ratios, because that's what we're talking about right here, we see that word ratio, when we unbalance those, then the mathematical computer is kind of like, oh, what's happening? Things are unbalanced and it doesn't look good. So it's only temporary. It will actually come back usually after 90 days. And that is as long as your credit to debt ratios are in a good position. Now, what do I mean by credit to debt ratios? So when you're looking at how much you owe on your credit cards, what you always want to see is at least what's called 70-30. That is the perfect ratio. And what that means is that 70% is available and there's a 30% balance. And you don't want to have, especially when you're getting a loan. So for those of you out there that are realtors and helping clients, that's the one thing that you always want to ask your clients is, hey, are your credit cards in a good position as far as your debt ratio is concerned? Because we want to make sure that your credit cards are not to the max, so that when we pull your credit report, your credit scores are going to be in a really good position. And I'll tell you another, what I call nugget when we get to that slide. But let's actually go to the next slide. As I'm going to the next slide, does anyone have any questions about what I just said?
Yeah, what you just said as far as them paying off their credit cards, it would take them, let's say, ideally like a month before we reflect on the credit. How long will it take?
That's a really good question. So I don't know if you guys heard that or not, but Tisha asked how long it takes for your payment to show up on your credit report with your credit card. So the thing to remember is that every single credit card that you have reports on a different date. You can always know what the date is by looking at your statement. And at the top right-hand corner of your statement, it will show the closing statement date. Now, the closing statement date is going to be the date in which your particular bank reports your balance to the credit reporting agencies. And the reason that it's different for every credit card is it's the anniversary of when you actually opened that card. And clearly, unless you open 6 credit cards at the same time, then, they would all report at the same time.
Someone said they couldn't see the slides. Are you sharing the screen?
Oh,
let me make sure. Screen sharing. Okay, you see it?
Yeah, maybe they switch to this one.
Okay, got it. Okay, now everyone else is good. All right, let me see.
There's different modes of viewing the screen, so just make sure.
okay.
Or who it was, but yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad that everyone can see. So, oh God, I'm getting old. What was I saying? Oh, we were talking about, yes. So we were talking about the anniversary of the card. So again, let's say that you are going to get a loan and you pull a copy of your credit report and you have 2 credit cards that are close to the max and you want to pay those down because you want to get your credit score up. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pay that tomorrow and I want it to report the next day. Well, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. But what you can do is you can go to your statement and see when the date is that it's going to populate. Okay, you can call your bank and let them know that you are purchasing a home and that you would like something called a fast report. And what they will do is it takes 72 hours, but they will report that information on your balance faster than they would normally report the batch that you're in. The other thing that you can do is if you're working with a lender, there's something called a rapid rescore process. And if you get a balance letter on, how much you paid down and what the balance is now, that lender can then go to their credit reporting company and have them update that information, and it will be updated within 72 hours, and it will change your credit score drastically. Now, here's another thing that you can actually do, which is awesome, which I have done, is you can actually go to your credit card company and ask them to make your closing statement date the same for every single credit card that you have. So if you want to, when the closing statement date is now, and when you pay it, it will populate. Usually it takes about 72 hours after the date that you're seeing on your closing statement date, just so you know. It's not like an automatic thing. That is the actual date that they send the data to the 3 credit reporting agencies, but nothing is super fast like that in the data world. As far as it pushing out to a third party, which is us. We're the third party. So they get that information the same day. However, most of the time it will take 48 to 72 hours before we, as the consumer, will see that information populate on our credit report, because we are a third party. So that's really good information to know and understand. Did anyone else have questions? All right, well, moving right along. So what I want to talk about next is the credit agencies and what you need to know about them. First of all, they are all for-profit companies. Are we surprised? No, we are not. And what are they profiting off of? They're profiting off of you and me and our information. Now, the thing that you must know is that the credit agencies collect data and information for a lot more than marketing. They actually work with the government and specifically the FBI. So a lot of information that we have on our credit report is used for a number of reasons. But the biggest reason that our information is used is for marketing. And the credit agencies, all 3 of them, make millions and millions of dollars a year on selling our data and information. And what do I mean by that? So when this used to happen, it doesn't happen that much anymore because of how data and the internet boom have changed as far as how they can see what we buy nowadays. Before, we used to have these little cards that we would have on our keys at Petco or, Ralph's or Vons or wherever it was that you went, and you had a club card. And what we used to think was, oh, that club card gives me savings. And yes, it does give you savings. So I don't want to throw that out of the window. However, what that information really was it was a tell-all system for different vendors and retailers to give information back to these credit agencies on what kind of wine you're buying, what kind of dog food that you're buying, so that then they could give that information back to those retailers. Okay, it's very, very important data to them because they want to know what city is buying the most of their dog food, or what city is buying the most of their wine, or whatnot. These analytics are very important to large corporations. So the thing is, the problem with that is that it leaves room for identity theft. Identity theft is the #1 crime in America. And unfortunately, our information being sold so much and handled so much is the reason the credit agencies, even though they're in the business to kind of help us in a certain way, I put my quotation marks up there like Dr. Evil did, but literally Dr. Evil. But the thing is that there are ways to opt out of them selling your information. So you can go to all three agencies online and actually opt out of them selling your information. And I want to tell you, every company that you do business with, especially when you do it online, they are going to give you that option if you want to opt out of receiving their text messages, receiving their information. Well, what they're not telling you is that you're opting in for them to sell that information somewhere else. Okay, so it's very, very important that you know and understand these nuances of the credit agencies and how they work and how they have taught and trained other retailers and companies to do the same. So again, they're all for-profit companies and they make a ton of money with all of the different banks and financial institutions, because what happens is the three credit agencies have relationships with different banks and financial institutions that report information to each of these entities. So it's very rare that you will find a bank that actually reports to all three agencies now, because it's very expensive for them to do that. So many years ago, they looked at their balance sheets and said, hey, we're not going to pay all three agencies to report this information. We're going to choose one or two, and those are the companies that we're going to have a relationship and we're going to pay to receive our data and then push it out to other vendors to weigh risk. But here's the funny thing is, guess what happens? All three agencies, what they do is they buy and sell information with each other. And so this is how this information actually ends up on all three credit agencies. So that's just a little lesson or history lesson on how they do business. Each agency reports differently. They all have a different credit scoring system, and I'll go over that. And it's really important for you to know that there is a fourth credit agency that has been trying to break through the market. COVID put a dagger in that, unfortunately. They were supposed to come out in 2022, and it looks like they probably will come out in 2024, and that's this company over here called Innovis. And you might have seen them on ATM machines. They basically insure money. That's what they do. But they decided many years ago, they've actually been lobbying to get into the credit industry probably for the last 9 years. So we will go from having 3 credit reporting agencies to 4. Isn't that fun? So we have Experian, which is formerly known as TRW. For those of you that are my age, we used to run around and say, oh, my TRW looks like this. Well, they were bought out by a European company several years ago. And there's actually a European credit system that's very much like ours. And we have Experian to thank for that. They are a publicly traded entity. Then you have TransUnion, which is the only privately held credit reporting agency, which we call the Friendly. They are actually the friendly credit reporting agency. They are very fair and they do things for the people, actually. Then you have Equifax, which is known as the Black Eye, because they have had a lot of problems and they had a huge breach a few years ago. But they managed to stay in business. They tried to take them down, but when you've got billions of dollars in the bank, it's hard to take you down. But they are also publicly traded. And then, of course, I just talked about Innovis. So Experian uses the originator, which is FICO. And I'm not going to go into a history lesson about FICO because it really doesn't matter. But the point is that they use the originator. Now, they came out with their own algorithm and their own credit scoring system, which is called Vantage. And they have been fighting to get out of their contract with FICO for the last 10 years. And they have not managed to do so. I don't think they ever will. So they still use FICO. TransUnion uses a system called Empirica, and that is their credit reporting system, and that is their scoring system. And Equifax uses a system called Beacon. Now, each of these systems calculate something different. So there's 150 different factors that FICO, the originator of the mathematical equation, came up with. And basically what these companies said is, you know what, we're going to take 80% of those factors and we're going to put that into our mathematical equation that we use for our credit score. And this is why you have 3 different credit scores, because each agency is using a different factoring system. But luckily the banking industry said, hey guys, since you guys can't get it together, this is what we're going to do just to make it fair. We're just going to say whatever the middle score is, that's what we're going to use. So thank God for that, right? So that is the credit agencies. Any questions there?
I know in the past we brought up freezing, and I froze it the last time we spoke.
Mhm.
Jonathan does that regularly.
Yes,
I don't know if we're gonna talk about that.
I can talk about that. Absolutely.
All right.
So Tisha was saying that I talked about at one point in time freezing your credit. And I'll actually talk about that when we talk about identity theft. So we'll talk about that. These are the 3 scoring models that we just talked about. Okay, is that all 3 agencies have their own model. But the thing I want you to consider and to understand is that you really have 9 scores. And the reason for that is that there are 3 different types of scoring systems, if I can confuse you anymore. There are 3 different systems. You have consumer, financial, and auto. Okay, so the consumer score is the one that we have access to at any time. When you go online, you go to Credit Karma, you go to Experian, you go to, Timbuktu, whatever it is that you do online to pull your credit report, that score that you see is, guess what? Good for nothing. No one uses it. It's the consumer credit score, and it's always going to be higher than what these other 2 are looking at. The second one is the financial credit score. And that is loosely based on, your credit cards, how many trade lines you have. And really it's looking at the last 4 to 6 years of history that you've created. Because what the banking world says is that they feel like every 4 to 6 years, consumers or humans go through some kind of financial change. And so what they want to always do is really just look at the last 4 to 6 years. And hence why you can have a 780 consumer credit score, and then the bank goes to pull your credit report and you're only 720 or 700. So this is a nugget for you guys out there that are realtors. When a client comes to you and says, oh yeah, baby, my credit score is 800. First thing you want to say is, that's amazing. Where did you get that information? Oh, I got it from Credit Karma. Okay, well, I have to tell you something, because I don't want you to get angry when the bank pulls your credit report and it's not 800. Okay, because it's going to be vastly different. And then the third one is the auto model score, which is loosely based on the amount of automobiles that you've purchased over the life of your credit. So if you've had no automobiles, you've never leased or you've never purchased, that's why they have the bend over special called the first time buyer. Sorry. So should we X that one out? So it's a terrible thing, but it's called the first time buyers program. And the interest rate can be up to 26%. It's really, really ridiculous. Okay. So these are the 3 scoring models that you guys have to know about and understand. Do we have any questions here?
Yes,
No?
where can I find my financial score? Is there like a place that I can look?
I wish. There's no place online. You can only get a financial score from a bank or a financial institution.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Experian comes the closest with its Vantage score.
What
But-
about the Credit Karma? I mean, can she get a rough idea where she stands from Credit Karma?
No. Unfortunately, that's your consumer credit score. So there's really no place. Yes.
And when you go to the bank to get the financial credit scores, does that negatively affect your credit by getting that credit?
Look at this girl. See, I love this. So you're talking about inquiries.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So I'm sorry, what was your name? Spring?
Mhm.
Spring, the lovely Spring. You can't see how beautiful she is, but the lovely Spring asked a very, very important and good question about inquiries. So the one thing that you should know is that there are hard pulls and soft pulls of inquiries. Okay. Now the soft pulls are inquiries that your current creditors can pull anytime. So when you sign for a credit card application, one of the things in small print that they say is we can check your credit whenever we want to, because we want to make sure that we don't have any risk with you. So when you look at a copy of your credit report, you'll actually see these inquiries others can see. These inquiries only you can see. Okay. So the soft inquiries do not hurt you. The hard inquiries don't hurt you really either. That's an old wives' tale, okay? But at the end of the day, a bank or a financial institution, when you're going to purchase something, if you have other inquiries from banks, they can ask you, why do you have these inquiries and you're coming to us? And they can turn you down for it, because if they think that you're trying to be nefarious in some kind of way and get a loan from them, and then you already have a loan, that can be a problem. But inquiries in itself really do not hurt you, okay? But they do show up for other creditors to see, okay? So again, they may ask questions. I see we have some questions here. Same question for me, okay. Dominita, did I answer that for you?
Yeah, kind of. I just, my question was more like, if I want to know that financial score,
Mhm.
can I go to the bank and ask for it, or is it something
No.
that is
You
gonna
can't,
hurt?
you won't be able to get it unless you're applying for something and you're
Mm,
filling out an application.
okay,
That's when you would get your financial score. But
okay,
here's the thing, you always have a good idea of where you're at. So let's
Okay.
say you pull, for, poops and giggles, let's just say you pull your Credit Karma and your Credit Karma is 780. When you go to the bank that your credit score is going to be anywhere from 700 to 740, depending on their criteria. Because
okay,
the other thing that we have to know and understand is that a lot of banks have different criteria. They can have an emphasis on how long you've had your credit history. They can have an emphasis on how many trade lines you have. So unfortunately, this industry is so unregulated. It's scary. And one day I hope that all of you guys see me on CNN, because I am working with a lobbyist right now to bring change to the industry. But it's all over the place, and it's actually not even that old. The credit system is really like 34 years old. So, I started in this business a year after it really, came to be. So it's really kind of still new. You see how I'm calling myself young? But the other question we have here is, Scott, you said, is my score from Citibank app legit? So no, it's not legit. Legit in the aspect that Citibank is only reporting TransUnion, so it's only reporting one agency. I wouldn't depend on any of you, even American Express, which is, don't leave home without it, the best credit card known to man. Their system is not good either. You really have to depend on a third-party company. You've got to have Credit Karma. You've got to have the Experian app, something like that. That's a much better algorithm and a much better foundation of what things look like, as opposed to the Citibank app. I hope that helps.
Question, sorry. So
Yeah.
I have Credit Karma and I check it on a regular basis. And I bank with Chase, so I check my credit score there. Obviously, they're about like 20 points off. So either one I can't depend on. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But I would venture to use Credit Karma more than the Chase app. Because that's what do they call it? Like the journey system or something like that?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't depend on that because again, they're only using, I believe Chase uses Experian. So
Correct.
the thing that you have to know and understand is even Credit Karma only uses TransUnion and Equifax. So you have to have an Experian account too, but all three of them you can have for free. So you can have Credit Karma for free and that will give you TransUnion and Equifax, and you can have Experian app for free and that's just going to give you Experian. But again, it's giving you a snapshot of where you're at. Okay, it's not a true reflection of what a bank is going to pull, but I just gave you an idea of how much the variance is. So
Okay.
your score, when you go to a bank, again, if it's 780 on Experian, or if it's 780 on Credit Karma, it's going to be anywhere from 700 to 740 when you go to a bank or financial institution. If it's 800, it's probably going to be 760.
Well, what
Okay.
about the MyFICO or
Same thing.
Oh.
Same thing.
okay.
My FICO is actually Experian's company. You see how creative these lovely credit reporting agencies are. They own online credit reporting companies, thousands of them, and they hide behind different names.
Got
So
it.
yeah. So, you know, whatever you do, this slide that we're at right now, monitoring your credit is so important. Okay. I always tell people that if you're not monitoring your credit, you're basically blind to what's going on in your life from a financial position, from your credit position, and from identity theft position. Okay. I am going to scare you right now for a reason. We get calls, many calls at our company on a daily basis from people who have been victims of identity theft. And one person that I spoke to just yesterday said, I will tell you that I told everybody in my life that I didn't give a shit what my credit score looked like. I didn't care about my credit at all. And he says, and now that I'm a victim of identity theft, it has scared me so bad. I can't believe that I was so ignorant. Monitoring your credit is one of the most important things that you can do. And Tisha was talking about, you know, making sure that you're frozen. Now, I have my credit frozen for a big reason. Number one is I want to cut the outside world off from having access to my credit whenever they want. Before I got my Tesla, I went to the car dealership. This was like, I think 7 years ago or something. And on my license plate, I have Credit Queen. It says Credit Queen. That's my license plate number. And so I pull into the dealership and I go straight to the finance manager because I don't futz around with salespeople. Sorry if there's any salespeople here. I love you, but I just go to the finance manager. And so I go right in there and I tell him the deal that I want, because you know what? When you have good credit, you call the shots. So I went in there and I said, hey, you know what? I have a really good credit score. This is what I want. This is what my payment is that I want it to be. And I want the sticker price of the car to be X. And he's like, oh, you know, you have a lot of wants. And so he says, okay, well, let me pull your credit and see what I can get you. Hence, pulling my credit was the most important thing. So he pulls my credit and he's like, don't you do something in credit or something like that? And I said, yeah. He says, well, you don't have a credit score or a credit report. And I was like, oh, no worries. I go on my phone, I unlock it and I say, go ahead and pull it. Now I did that for a reason, because I wanted to show him and anybody that I do business with that they don't have access to my credit report whenever they want to. And the reason for that is because the biggest identity theft that happens is inside companies that have had access to your social security number, and your credit history. Also, believe it or not, they have found that a lot of hospitals and medical providing companies have had access to important information. I mean, what's the first thing when you go to the doctor's office? They want your blood type and everything about you and your firstborn child, and they want to know everything about you, including your social security number, your date of birth, and where you live in your full name. You're giving them the keys to Pandora's box. So it's very important that you monitor your credit, number one, and number two, that you do something to protect what you are building. Okay, so freezing it is the ultimate choice as far as I'm concerned, because it's so easy to unlock or unfreeze your credit. Now, the reason I said unlock is because there are two different things that you can do. You can lock your credit or you can freeze your credit. Now, the difference is that freezing your credit is federally regulated. Locking is a private company institution. Okay, so if you had really bad identity theft, but you only locked your credit instead of freezing it, if you needed to change your social security number, it would be more difficult. Okay, so always choose the freezing over the locking. And the locking also can be done on your phone. And if you lose your phone or something like that, even though it's hard because it's got, you know, your passwords, but a lot of people keychain their passwords so that they don't have to put them in. And that's the other thing that I will tell everybody on this phone: do never, ever, ever save your passwords in your computer or your phone. I know that it's easier, but it's also easier for theft. So I see we have a question here. How can I get my credit frozen? Very easily. You can go on all 3 credit reporting agencies, set up an account, and freeze your credit right there. On every single website, it has the opportunity to do so. My Equifax, you set up a My Equifax account, set up an Experian freeze account, set up a TransUnion freeze account, boom, you're done. But remember, freeze, not lock, because they give you the option. Okay, moving right along. Are we done? How are we on time? We're fine? Okay. So we just talked about identity theft. 1 out of 6 people are affected. Okay. It happens from credit card companies, loss of personal belongings, internet applications. You always want to go to sites that have safe shopping. People tell me all the time, Angela, don't all sites have safe shopping now? No. They don't. A lot of these, you know, small vendors, even, you know, I don't want to put them out there like that, but there's don't have the safe shopping experience. So you have to know that. Government institutions, Social Security Administration was hacked 4 years ago. Millions of records were stolen. Millions. Family members. I have a client right now. So I feel so bad for him. His mother has been using his credit for, I don't know, 14 years now. And, you know, he's in the NFL, he's making all of this money, and his credit is terrible because his mother completely ruined his credit history and stole his identity. And so we've been working to remediate that situation, but he is one of those people that needs to change his social security because his mother's not going to stop. And mail fraud, people stealing your mail. So these are the ways that it can happen. Now, here are some steps that you want to take if you've been a part of a breach. Okay. I think, well, here's some statistics here. Okay. There was an increase in 2019, but in 2022, I believe that they reported that there were over 2,000 breaches on very large databases. Happens all the time. And you guys have heard of the hostile takeovers where there were companies that their databases were locked from overseas companies. There's so many terrible things that are happening in this world today. And it's just so sad. But I won't get you crying right now. The point is that these are the steps to take if you've been a part of a breach. And now it is the responsibility of any company that has had a breach to let their customers know and to automatically offer them monitoring services. But at this day and age, everybody should have a monitoring system that they pay for, not just, the free ones are good, absolutely. But some of the paid ones are a little bit better. Experian is a really good product, by the way. It's inexpensive. It's $13 a month, and it's just really good to have. It is an investment for some of us, but you're investing in yourself. But if you have your credit report frozen, it's not really too much to worry about. But if you are a part of a breach, that's the first thing you want to do is make sure that your credit is frozen. Place a fraud alert on your credit report. Okay. So don't put a fraud alert on there if you have not been a part of a breach or you haven't had identity theft, because it is really a pain in the tuchus when you have to go and get, a car. What's that?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. So it can be a pain when you want to go get a car or you're filling out an application. Some companies may say, well, you have a fraud alert on your credit report. Now we need you to write us a letter that, this is really you, or we need a copy of your driver's license. Now, here's the thing. Should it be hard for you to apply for credit? Yeah, because, you don't want it to be easy, but you don't want it to be that hard either. So only put the fraud alert if you have truly been a victim. Secure a police report, really important if you have been a victim of identity theft. And let me tell you something. This is another reason why it's so important to monitor and to freeze your credit. We have several clients. I think we have about 67 clients right now that are fraud victims that we're working on. And many of them, the banks are not considering the police report and the notarized fraud affidavit form sufficient evidence for them to prove that they were a victim of identity theft. And these clients were truly victims because we put people through a little bit of a process to make sure that they were a victim, because we don't want to waste our precious time working for someone that did it on purpose. Now, you're going to say, well, do people really do that? Yes, they do. They really, really do. So it's not easy to repair credit anymore when someone has been a victim of identity theft. It's actually difficult. So this is why we're telling you to take these steps and take them very seriously. So here are the things that can hurt your credit history. A dollar collection. Just basically what I'm saying is a collection can hurt you. Going $1 over your credit limit, okay? That can really cause your credit score to go down quite a bit. Having too much credit. I tell this story all the time. A long time ago when I actually used to go meet clients at homes, that tells you how old I am. That was a long time ago. But I went to a woman's home. She was married to a multimillionaire. I'd look over in the corner and there's a stack of bills this high. I'm not joking, guys. You see this high. Okay. It's against the wall. I'm like, what is that? And she's like, oh, those are my credit card bills. And I said, your credit card bills? And she says, yeah, every place that I go into, they give you this thing and they say, do you want 10% off? And I'm like, yes, I want the 10% off. And I'm like, honey, you're married to a millionaire. You don't need the 10% off. She had 57 credit cards. Okay. Now, what that can do besides be a freaking nightmare is that can really hurt your credit history, because keeping up with 57 credit cards is a lot. So what I had the dubious task of doing with her is closing all of those credit cards and getting her 3 credit cards that had $100,000 limit on them. So now I says, shop till you drop, do whatever you do, but having 57 credit cards is not the answer. So, having too much credit, the bottom line, can be a problem. Length of credit, meaning like how long you've had credit history, is also really important. So if you haven't had credit history for too long, number one, a lot of banks are looking for you to have 2 years worth of history. And why is that? Because they want to see how you've treated other banks. They want to see the kind of risk they have. Every bank and financial institution, the reason that they depend on the credit reporting system is to understand their risk assessment. Okay, back in the day before the credit system was around, they used to have something called the indexing system. And what that was is that every bank and financial institution that you paid off would send a record into the indexing system saying, Mr. Smith paid off his $100,000 debt that he had to us. And it was easy because Farmer Joe, if he was having bad crops that month and he needed, not to pay his loan, he would call his banker and say, hey, you know what, the crops aren't doing good this month. Can I pay you in 90 days? And the banker would say, yeah, no problem. No issue, right? Nowadays, if that happens, well, I'm sorry, we're going to have to report you 90 days late. Okay, so length of credit history, having relationships with creditors, super, super important. And obviously late payments within the past 24 months can really hurt you. See, we have a question. Do you think a monitoring service is necessary if I keep my credit frozen? Yes, absolutely. Because even when your credit is frozen, believe it or not, these thieves are smart. And what happens a lot of the times, especially if it's internally inside of a bank, is they don't even need to pull your credit report to get you a loan or to get an apartment in your name or to turn on utilities or things of that nature. So absolutely, keeping your credit frozen is cutting off the outside world from having access to your credit report, but it doesn't mean that they don't have access to your information if it's inside of a company. So I always want to have my eyes on the prize and seeing what's going on, even though my credit is frozen. So yes, absolutely. And thank you for asking that question.
Karma, do you recommend which companies? Like, there's a couple.
I don't have a recommendation of any companies, because they're not paying me. But no, really, my thing is that as long as you are monitoring it, you're good.
The other thing I noticed that's on here, I'm sorry, Nate, go ahead.
What would do you recommend, what would you say would be the best sort of payment to make? Would it be minimum, double minimum, something like that to actually, if you can, increase your, score just off payments?
So she asked, Spring asked if it's better to make your minimum payments or if it's better to make double payments. Here's the thing that I don't want you to get caught up on is the payments you're making. I want you to get caught up on the balance that you have on your credit card. Okay, exactly. So now, and here's the thing I want you to think about too. It doesn't matter if your credit cards are high for 6 months because you're investing in something or doing something and you're looking at your credit report and you're feeling bad because your score is low because your balances are high. Who cares, right? Because you only need it when you need it, but you know that you have to prepare for it when you want to go and buy something. So now you've got a plan, because I tell people all the time, you have a financial plan, you have a death plan, life insurance plan, but you don't have a credit plan. And I tell all the time, my grandmother, she was a Holocaust survivor. And whenever we would go and buy my Tough Skins, you don't know anything about that, but these were the jeans that we got when I was a young girl at Sears. And so she was like, honey, we're going to buy your clothes for school. And she'd go to the freezer and she'd pull out this big block of ice and she'd put it in the sink and she'd turn on the hot water. She told me this every single year when we would go to buy the clothes. Okay. Don't ever carry your credit cards in your wallet. Why, Grandma? I would always, entice her with that question because she wanted to tell me anyways. And she said, because you use it. Duh. Okay. So, so I always remembered that is that, she had a plan. She always had a plan. So when she was going to go use that credit card, she was going to make it difficult for herself, number one. And number two, she had a plan on how she was going to pay it back. So when she was going to get me my Tough Skins and my clothes to go to school, She was going to spend, whatever it was back then, $600 or whatever. And she knew, because she was, very humble means, that it was going to take her a year to pay that off, but she had a plan to do it. And this is what we need to do when we have credit and credit cards. Too many people think that credit cards are extra cash. It's not extra cash. It's a way to leverage your position, and it's a way to leverage your life on investing. So just have a plan. Moving right along, establishing credit. Okay, so revolving credit is super important. Okay, there are two different types of credit. You have revolving and installment. Revolving credit means that it revolves until it stops because you stop it, meaning that you close the account or the vendor or the creditor closes it for you. Okay, installment credit is a little bit different. Installment credit is a contract. You have a payment, it's X, and it has a maturity date. Installment credit is not very important, believe it or not, to the credit scoring system. Okay, so installment credit actually gains you less points than having revolving credit. And the reason for that is that keeping revolving credit is harder than keeping installment credit. Installment credit is usually your home loans and your cars. Okay, and what they've said is like, people are going to pay their cars and their homes before they're going to pay their credit cards, is the bottom line. And so they put more of an emphasis on your credit cards. So revolving credit, you need to have at least 2 credit cards. Again, why is that? Because it's looking for balance. Were you ever young and you would go to the park and they had those seesaws? And can you imagine being on the seesaw with no one on the other side? How boring. You just the-dung, the-dung,
I was
the-dung.
only child, I know that feeling.
So it's going nowhere. But when you have someone on the other side, you can go like this and you're actually a seesaw. Well, I'm giving you that visual to show you that that's what the credit scoring system is looking for. It's looking for that balance to go up and down. If you only have one credit card, then you don't have this going on. Hence, you're not going to have a really high or valuable credit score. The other thing is I tell people to stop opening and closing credit cards. We talked about that in the beginning. And obviously, revolving credit is important to potential lenders. They want to see your spending patterns. Okay. And utilization is a part of the mathematics that the FICO scoring system uses. Now, what do I mean by utilization? So you can have a credit card and never use it. Well, is that going to help you? Absolutely not. It's actually going to hurt you because the credit scoring system has an algorithm for that so that it can say, hey, this client or this person has a credit card and they never use it. They haven't used it in 2 years. And guess what it does? It sends off a signal to the credit card company that they need to look at you and they need to weigh whether they want to have that risk out there. The time for putting credit cards in the safe and making them for a rainy day or an emergency are over. You have to use credit cards at least once every 90 days in order to keep them active and in order for creditors and banks to be interested in keeping you as a customer. Now, it doesn't matter how much you spend, because the other thing that's cool is that the credit system is looking, and I'm going to use this analogy, at the rich and the poor. Okay, I'm giving you two, completely different stories. And the reason I'm saying that is it doesn't matter if it's $100,000 credit card or it's a $500 credit card. It's about the utilization. And that's what the banks and financial institutions are looking at and they have access to. Okay, so if you've ever looked at your Experian credit report and you have studied it, maybe that's what we'll do in the next class is we'll look at an Experian report or any of the reports, and I will teach you how to read them because that's very important. But banks and financial institutions can see how you've used that. Now, I've been emancipated since I was 16 years old. And when I was 16 and a half, I worked at a bank and I worked my way up from being the receptionist to an underwriter. And it being an underwriter back in those days, we didn't really have the credit scoring system that we used. We literally had to look at credit reports. We had to look at tax returns and bank statements and really give an assessment of underwriting. And the banking world is actually going back to that old hat. So although we have the credit scoring system, they're actually doing the old hat underwriting again. So they're looking at these things. They're looking at how much you use your credit cards, especially if you're getting a very large loan from a business perspective. So really important stuff. And the other thing is that it's going to take you 6 months if you don't have any credit to build credit. And you have to be very intentional about doing that. So when you have 2 new credit cards that you're building credit with, you want to use them every single month. You don't want to use more than 60% of the card. When the bill comes in, you want to do something very specific, which is you want to pay 80% of the card, leave 20% to revolve and pay interest the following month. Now, some people say, interest? I don't want to pay the bank interest. Why would I do that? Well, here's the thing you got to understand. The banks are in the business to make money. And if they're not making money off you, then you're no good. Because again, if they're giving you access to free money, they want something for it. Okay. And some people say, well, they're getting money from the retailers. Well, that's from the retailers and they're going to get that whether you're a customer or not. So when they're looking at their global list of customers, when we're in a recession, we're going in one, they're going to look at their customers and say, or look at them and say, you know, has this customer used this credit card? Have they paid us any interest? Yeah, we don't like this customer anymore. And you could have a relationship with this bank for 20 years and they could say, you know what? Yeah, we think you're too much of a risk because you've really never paid us any interest. Maybe you did back, 17 years ago, but honey, we need some money. So
that's a really good point. When I first started over, I had to get the secured card. So I have a lot of single moms that I work with that think it's better to not have any cards. I'm like, you have to get a credit card. You have to, it sounds weird, but you have to spend it every month. But when I first started, I would pay it back. I would use it for gas when I get that $200 secured card from Capital One or wherever. And then I pay off. But you're right, it took me a full year to do it that way. I didn't know you had to leave a little bit. So
yeah.
I'm doing that like intentionally now because of you.
Well, and the thing that you have to know is that there's a smart way to do it. Okay. I still do it, of course, to this day. And what I do is I'm a freak, just so you know, like my calendar is like freakish. If you ever looked at it, you'd be like, whoa. I calendar everything. And so one of the things that I calendar is when I'm going to pay interest on my credit cards. Okay. And I do it very strategically. So if I have a $10,000 credit card that month that I know that I'm going to pay interest, I use $100. So when I pay the bill, I pay $80, I leave $20, and I pay $2.12 on interest the following month. Do they care? No, because it's an algorithm in their system that they can see. It's like a graph. When they pull up your account, they can see, oh, yes, this customer paid interest, check. Okay, next customer. Just got to play the game to win, right? So 5 habits to raise your FICO score, and then I think we're done. Maintain a good credit to debt ratio under 30%. Retain at least 2 traditional revolving credit cards established for at least a minimum of 12 months. Utilization factor, we kind of talked about this. Use an open credit card at least 90 days. Monitor your credit to ensure there are no errors, delinquencies, collections, or threat of identity theft. Okay, so really important stuff, guys. Do we have a question? I think I saw someone.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
I have a question. So I've been a victim of identity theft, and I recently found out that I pulled my credit score and it states that I lived in Michigan. I've never lived in Michigan. Now, is there like a template that you might have that I can use that to send out to all 3 credit bureaus?
I'm going to give you something even easier to do. What I want you to do is I want you to go to the FTC's website. and you need to fill out online that you've been a victim of identity theft. Now, here's the thing that you're going to need to do before you do that. And if you can send me your email address, I will email you the forms that you need. You
I've
ready?
already went and I froze my credit.
That's not what I'm talking about, though. You freezing your credit is stopping the damage, but now we have to fix the damage. Did you get a police report?
No, they didn't want to obtain a police report because they said that I didn't really have anything affect my credit, that it was just that it just shows that somebody tried, but they didn't do anything. So I was not.
So you're not really a victim of identity theft. You just have maybe an address on your credit report that doesn't belong to you.
Well, they tried to obtain a loan, and then my ex, I found out that half of the stuff that he was buying me, and he was using my credit to use all of that.
Well, you could probably get rid of all of that by filing a police report and a fraud affidavit. You don't have to tell them who did it. You know,
Okay.
We can talk about that off class.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to help you though, okay? And I want to make sure and give you some really good information so you feel comfortable, because I know that that can feel, really scary sometimes that that's going on. And I really want to help you with that. So if you can email me, my email address is Angela, S as in Sam, at, you know what? You can do something even easier. Just go to my website, angelabessard.com. And you can just fill out your information and it'll email it to me.
Okay.
Angela Bessard, Bessard.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I actually have a question. Something you mentioned about the credit card use. So I have I want to say 5 credit cards open. 3 are paid off and the other 2 I'm paying off. I don't use any of them. I just continuously pay them off. The 3 that I don't use, they're just a balance 0 because I'm just scared to start, adding more and more. Sometimes I don't have self-control and I'm like, swipe. But is that okay, or should I at least
Something small. Something small.
Okay.
So when you have a plan, okay, like gas, something that you need, something you're going to spend it on anyways, right?
Okay.
So maybe it's your cell phone bill. You go online and you pay your cell phone on your credit card. You're going to have to pay the bill anyways, right?
Right.
So you could do that. I tell people to put, reoccurring expenditures on their credit card because, we all live in a cash flow situation, right? We have reoccurring expenses that we have anyways. And so if you put them on your credit card and you pay them off at the end of the month and you're not paying interest on them, it's not really costing you anything. And you're using the credit card at the same time.
Okay. One of the credit cards I do have are more to because I have a Macy's card, and that one I haven't touched in forever. It's just there, sitting at 0 because that's
they won't close that one because that's a department store card.
Okay. So
I
that's
wouldn't
okay
worry
to
about that.
leave.
Yeah.
Okay. Just the credit cards that Wells Fargo and Citibank.
Exactly. Yeah. Department store cards, except for the luxury brands like Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue and places like that, they will close your card if you don't use it. But, like Macy's and JC Penney's and Kohl's and places like that, they know that their customers sometimes are only using those credit cards once or twice a year, and that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anyone else? Okay, well, the last thing I want to tell you guys is if you need any information, I do a podcast. It's called Your Credit Today. Feel free to, log on, subscribe. I have a lot of really great information that I'm talking about. I have guests on my show. I am really revamping it this year. I want to bring a lot of really fresh content to there because my goal and my passion is to share the wisdom that I have with the world. And, I do understand that not everybody can afford to do credit repair or hire a company to do credit repair for them or coach them or whatnot. So I want to be able to give to the community. So that's the way that I am able to do that. And then another way that I am doing that is I actually have a nonprofit, but I'm going to be working more with Tisha and her nonprofit, but my nonprofit is called Project Engage. And it's really about engaging in the community of financial literacy and helping people, become more financially literate. So I thank you all for showing up tonight. I hope that I was able to add something to your knowledge as far as it pertains to credit. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here. I thank you guys so much for your time. And with that, I bid you adieu.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you want to
Go
hear?
ahead, yeah. That was great.
Oh, it's not a.
Oh, I keep doing that. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.